What if? Look at me, just being so humble.
God, I hate tight ends.
What it is they leave Devontae Adams wide open because he sucks.
I don't spend much time staring at guys' mouths.
That's why I can justify Tyrod. I mean, he's a poor man's Russell Wilson, who's a poor man's Cam Newton, who's a poor man's Michael Vick from Madden 2004.
But I still love you, Martavis. I'm so happy you missed the playoffs for so many reasons. I'm Joe.
Oh yes! Hello everyone and welcome back. It is time yet again for the Fantasy Football Apocalypse. I am Trent Scott, joined by Jeremy Scott.
Your champion for week 2. This is a sombrero, contrary to popular opinion.
It is absolutely not a sombrero.
And Trent. But you're going to get used to seeing this hat and maybe this shirt. I'll probably switch it up. But you got your champion here and the overall lead, Jeremy Scott.
Well,
Trent.
actually not in the overall lead. That is fake news. If you could find our point totals from week 1 and week 2, I'm actually in the overall lead. But as it is, we are 1-1 heads up. Jeremy got the very close win last week, 66-62. Before we get going, real quick, just want to make sure we say thank you to our producer, Brad, making this whole thing possible. So with that being said, Jeremy, let's dive into our picks from last week, shall we?
Yes, absolutely. But let's talk a little fantasy first. Here's what I saw that I was impressed with. Ty Montgomery. He's a lot better off than I thought he would be. Here's something interesting, Trent. I went back and looked at a draft I did. I drafted Isaiah Crowell, whose fantasy season might as well rest in peace. He's terrible.
3 points on Sunday. 3 points.
My goodness. Anyway, I could have drafted Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Ty Montgomery, and somebody else. Every single person was ahead of that guy. So I'm kicking myself for that one.
Yeah, it sounds like you should. Ty Montgomery is awesome.
Here, you're looking at an expert in the black shirt over there who's in dead last in our Yahoo League.
Jeremy, where are you at in that league, by the way?
Maybe we shouldn't be talking about that. But
yeah, let's not hurt our own credibility here with our audience.
I would like to talk before we dive into picks about a couple of trades I made this week. I'd like to hear your opinion.
All right, let's hear them.
So with our producer, Brad, actually, I made a trade. I gave up Aaron Rodgers and, oh gosh, Brad, remind me, who was it? Nelson Aguilar. And I received Kirk Cousins, Kelvin Benjamin, and Tevin Coleman. And a 6th-round pick for my 10th-round pick next year.
You can trade draft picks?
Dude, this is that league I was telling you about. It's not big money.
That's pretty legit.
Yes, but everyone's so into it. It's pretty cool. So I would say, even on the whole, I like that trade because of how pitiful the team I inherited was. But if you're 0-2, you got to make some moves. I know there's a lot of us out there who are, and I am in 2 leagues of 8, actually. So, but hey, it'll bounce back, right? I don't have this hat on for no reason. Let's see. I did another one. Trent, did you trade this week?
I did not. I had a couple of trade offers. One of which was before week 2 that I really wish I had accepted at this point, which would have involved me receiving Kareem Hunt, who all of a sudden looks like a possible RB1 for the entire season, who I was 1 pick away from drafting in our regular draft, and I just missed out on him. Had a chance to trade for him, did not pull the trigger. Kind of wish I had now. But, yeah, like you said, I'm in last place, so I am 0-2, obviously. Had a couple of offers, nothing that I'm really sold on just yet. I'm not quite ready to throw in the towel just yet. I was 1-2 last year and made the playoffs. So I think if I'm 0-3, though, that's when the real concern sets in for me.
Right, definitely. But here's the thing, it's fantasy, it's a long season. All you need to get is a 6th seed, and you have a chance at the playoffs.
That's right, because you just got to get hot for 3 weeks, and you can win the whole season. So
Absolutely. I've done it a few times.
Yes. Yes, you have.
Now,
One of which 2 years ago I'm still not over.
here's what I noticed in the league that Trent and I are in. Dating back the last 4 years, I won the championship, missed the playoffs, lost in the championship last year, and now I'm 0-2. So it's looking every bit like I'm going to miss the playoffs. But hey, I will take those odds.
You're due.
If I could be in the championship every other year, I'll miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I've gone fourth, third, and now I'm 0-2. That's my last 4 years in that league. So
Yeah.
I've been in the third place game 3 years in a row.
He typically does well, but again, that's not what we're here for. We are here for the picks. And I will say that Trent, we did preface week 1, it was going to be a little bit rough. It was, but we had some good picks in there. If you look at our average player, which we'll get to in a minute, we averaged on, again, between the two of us per position, we averaged 15 points a player. So if you, are doing the math from these scrubs that are owned by 50% or leagues or less, we're getting you 90-something points. So anyway, let's dive into those picks from last week. My quarterback was Sam Bradford, who did not play. So
yes. I should say your win does come with a big asterisk. You picked
How is
Sam
that an
Bradford
asterisk?
on the show,
what
and he
person
did
would
not play.
What person would keep Sam Bradford in? Like, what smart person would? That's probably why your strategy
What
doesn't
smart
work,
person would have
because you have too
picked
much
an injured
pride.
player in the first place?
No, I literally said he's banged up, so monitor it. Just like I said, Jesse James. Anyway, Tyrod Taylor, he got 10, not wild about, but his legs got him 5 of those, which I am wild about. That's what he's all about. Buck Allen was my pick of the week. I'm not going to say Allen Hurns was even remotely close to that, but Allen Hurns did what I thought he would. Allen Hurns is a scrub fantasy points receiver. Allen Robinson's gone. Marquise Lee is pretty good. He's going to do that. Probably won't get a touchdown more often than not. Giovanni, his day is coming. I promise. Cup had a down week. I still like him. Even if you're just a small little trade, try to get him. Jesse James will be all right. He actually got injured the first drive of the game, so he was a little banged up. I think he would have had more points than that.
All right, well, that being said, let's take a look at my picks from last week. Shall we, Jeremy?
Let's do it.
So my quarterback, Jay Cutler, had a pretty quiet day, actually. Racks up 13 points, only throws 1 touchdown. It was a pretty conservative game plan, but 13 points, that's not a terrible result from a quarterback. Tariq Cohen puts up 12, has 8 catches, really big value there. Chris Thompson scores 24. Jeremy, you made fun of that pick. He came through in a big, big way, scoring 2 touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar, really disappointed in this guy. He had a huge game week 1. I thought he would produce in week 2. He only had 1 catch. Luckily, he made it count. It was a touchdown.
Did you see when it happened, by the way?
I actually did not, no.
It literally was the last pass of the game, time. I think actually there was
the
one
Blake
kickoff.
Bortles special.
Dude, oh my gosh. Anyway, go ahead.
Corey Davis, huge disappointment. He gets injured, only scores 1 point as a result. And then finally, Julius Thomas only had 3 catches, was only targeted 3 times. Thank God he caught all 3 of them. Really disappointing day. Might have been too high on Thomas and his stock going forward. So
and as a Dolphins fan, I pointed that out last week. But I did like the Cutler pick, and Cutler actually looked okay. He looked in rhythm. Now the Chargers aren't like a big defense, but I'm curious to see what he's got against the almighty Jets this week. Ready to take that division by storm and stay undefeated.
So let's quickly run through a position by position comparison, shall we? Starting with the quarterbacks, Jeremy had Tyrod. I had Jay Cutler. I win that one. Cutler's 13 points. Good enough to take our top QB spot. Moving on to running backs. Jeremy's first running back, Buck Allen, came through in a huge way. Has 20 points, better than Tariq Cohen. So he's the top running back there. Second running back position, Chris Thompson. We just talked about the enormous day. He was the top scoring player either one of us had last week.
Man, he blew Buck Allen and Hurns out of the water, didn't he? My goodness.
Yeah. Hey, 4 points is a pretty big difference. That's
no, it's not.
That's 20%.
Didn't you just bash Isaiah Crowell for getting 3 points last week?
Total. There's a huge. What are you talking about?
I'm saying,
whatever. Let's move on.
4 points is not a substantial.
It's a 20% difference.
Trent.
Would you rather have $1,000 or $1,200, Jeremy?
Depends on what day of the week it is.
Shut up. You know I'm right. Let's move on. First wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar. Neither one of these were great picks, but Nelson Aguilar does eke it out. His 7 points beats Cooper Kupp's 6. Second wide receiver spot, Jeremy's boy, Alan Hearns, puts up the big 20 spot. So he'll be the second wide receiver there. And then finally, tight end.
Trent, is 20 minus 1 substantial?
Yes, 20 is
Okay, just
substantially
check. I just wanted to check. Because 4 sounded a lot more excitable in your eyes than 19.
I'm just trying to run through the totals here. And then finally,
his own horn. But that's where you guys come to watch us argue.
I'm just trying to give numbers here. And finally, Jeremy, let me get through the pick. God. And then finally, tight end. Neither one of us had really a great pick. Jeremy's Jesse James does outperform Julius Thomas by 1 point. So there you see all of our top 6 picks. You put that together, that comes out to exactly 90 points, as Jeremy alluded to earlier, which is a 15-point per player average. And if you take out Aguilar and Jesse James, that number is even more impressive. So, like Jeremy said, we're not giving you superstars, but we are giving you guys who are producing, which is all that really matters.
And again, if you just lost Jordy Nelson, if you just lost David Johnson last week, if you're still looking for that guy, they are still there, and they will continue to be available, and we will continue to exploit them. This is like buying a penny stock and having it go off with no risk of the company going bankrupt. If they stay at 0, you lose nothing. You get your money back.
So Jeremy, what I'm hearing is we're like the Wolves of Fantasy Street.
Maybe we have the wrong team name or the wrong team name. The Wolves of Fantasy. That would be actually a funny play. All right, Trent. We are 13 minutes in. Again, we try to keep this show short. 30 minutes, 45 tops. Last week we were closer to 45, so we're going to try to make that closer to 30 this week.
All right, let's jump right into this week's picks. Once again, just a real quick reminder, if you're a first-time viewer, first-time listener, we only pick players that are available in 50% or less of Yahoo leagues. That's obviously the easiest number to work with because it means more than likely the guy is going to be available for you to pick up in your league. So with that being said, Jeremy, who is going to be your quarterback pick for week 3?
You actually brought something very interesting up that made me think of it. 50% or less, to put that into perspective, Tariq Cohen last week was owned by 12% of leagues. In our Yahoo, he went from 12%, he jumped up to 78% owned. He's off limits. Guys like Chris Thompson are now at 51% owned. We can't pick these guys. So we are literally, it is an apocalyptic situation, bottom of the barrel, scraps. Now I say that, and I mentioned the best QB in the league, Trevor Siemian, coming off a 231-yard, 4-touchdown, 1-pick game against our beloved Cowboys, which begs the question, are the Giants that bad or are the Broncos that good? That's another show. But I do like Trevor Siemian. I'm going to ride him while he's hot. He costs nothing. You won't even have to bid fab budget on this guy. He's got another tasty matchup next week. They haven't given up as many points to quarterbacks. But that isn't because they haven't been giving up points. They're playing the Buffalo Bills next week. I still like Siemian a lot.
Real quick, I'll give my thoughts on Trevor Siemian. I'm just a little skeptical of this pick for a few reasons. Number one, they're playing the Bills. The Bills just limited the Panthers to 9 points last week. The Bills have been widely known for the only thing they can do right the last 4 or 5 years is play good defense. Plus, I'm just not buying into this Trevor Siemian hype. He's thrown 6 touchdowns in 2 games. He threw 18 all of last year. I would be stunned if he even gets to 25, which would mean just throwing 19 in the last 14 games. I don't even think he's going to do that. So I'm a little concerned about Siemian.
How many points do you think he has this week then? Side bet.
Against the Bills, 12.
Okay, how much? I'll take him over. I'll take 12, 13 or more.
All right, 13 or more points. We'll call it a 10 spot.
Yeah, you got your. Let's make it a little more exciting. A Chipotle burrito.
Oh. All right, I'll do that. Next time I'm in Fort Worth, loser buys the other a burrito at Chipotle. If Trevor Siemian scores 12 or less, you're buying me. If he scores 13 or more, I'm buying one for you.
With guac or without?
I'll tell you what. If he goes over 20, you can have
Okay.
one.
All right.
If he goes under 7, you have to find me one.
Okay.
This is a layered bet.
You guys can stop with you. All right. Moving on to the next quarterback. Trenton, who's your pick of the week?
All right, so my pick, I picked him last week. He beat your quarterback last week. I think he's going to beat your quarterback again this week. It's Jay Cutler. Ironic that I'm saying your quarterback because Cutler quite literally is your quarterback as you're a Miami Dolphins fan. Cutler last week has, let me read you his stats real quick, 24 out of 33, 73% completions, 230 yards, 7 yards an attempt, incredibly efficient. He only threw 1 touchdown. I think that goes up. Why? They are playing the New York Jets. This could get ugly. We just saw the Raiders drop 45 on them. I really like Cutler in this spot.
Listen here, Trent. This is the second week in a row you've stolen my quarterback. Smoking Jay. He's just out there gunslinging it like he used to back in the old Chicago days. The only difference is he's a warm weather guy. He always has been. And that's why it's getting along. He's getting along well in Miami. I like Jay. I don't like him as much as Simeon because I'm rolling the Simeon train. Confidence plays a huge factor, but I promise you, nobody has more self-confidence than Jay Cutler. So I like that pick, and I think he continues to do very well with Jarvis Landry. I think we'll see Devontae Parker have some better games moving forward, so he's a guy I've been trying to target. But anyway, I like the pick. I like Cutler.
All right, so let's move on to wide receivers. Jeremy, who is going to be your first wide receiver this week?
My first wide receiver pick will be, again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I screwed that up.
Back.
That is my fault. We do running backs first. That is my bad.
You're
Jeremy,
a terrible MC, Trent.
Who is going to be your first running back?
We'll do it live! I'm so glad you got that. Okay, I'm going with a man who I'm pretty sure his first name is Chris Carson. He's a rookie. Now, here's something very interesting. On a podcast that, not Steve Carroll, Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll said on his podcast, they like the guy. He's a rookie. The defense in practice was saying Chris Carson should be the starter all year long. He's back. They gave him 20 carries with Lacey was inactive. With a healthy Rawls, a healthy Pro Size, those guys are nobody. Chris Carson is the guy. They gave it to him 20 times, even with a terrible offensive line. He was also in there on the passing plays. Only had 1 catch for 7 yards, but I like Chris Carson. I mean, what the heck else can you get under 50% that has 20 carries right now?
All right, so for my thoughts about Chris Carson, first off, R.I.P. Eddie Lacy. It was a good run. Secondly, I can't believe Pete Carroll has a podcast. And finally, Chris Carson, look, he looked good last week. The situation is not entirely clear just yet with the Seattle backfield. If Carson does what he did last week again this week, it's going to be a hell of a lot more clear. Thomas Rawls struggled mightily. I was very disappointed. 5 carries, 4 yards. Obviously, he's probably not going to be that bad again, but he's going to have to be way better if he's going to be a threat to Chris Carson. So all things considered, I think Carson is a great value play here.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, Trent. All right, give me your running back pick of the week.
So my first running back, first running back this week. Worked out so well last week. Why not run it back? Chris Thompson, 24 points last week, 15 points the week before. That's
Wait a second.
What?
Wasn't he 51%?
No, he's 32%.
Who was 51% that I'm thinking? Oh, Javorius Allen. I said, disclaimer, this is one of those things that our producer would correct me after the show. I said Chris Thompson earlier, who's at 51%. Javorius Allen is now at 51%. We can't take him or Tariq Cohen. Trent?
Chris Thompson, however, we can take, and I am taking.
Okay.
So 39 points in 2 weeks. Obviously, I'm not saying this guy is going to average 19 points a game for the rest of the season, but I did hear his head coach, Jay Gruden, specifically talking about today. They want to increase his workload. That, this is a guy who's gotten about 8 to 10 touches the first 2 weeks. That number is probably going to be closer to 15. He's a huge passing game specialist. And as far as that is concerned, they're playing the Raiders, so there's a chance they're going to be getting blown out in this game, which means Thompson's going to get to be on the field even more. So I really like him in this spot. He's got a ton of momentum, so I am rolling once again with Chris Thompson.
I strategically passed on Chris Thompson and went with Chris Carson because I had honors. Our first 2 picks were Chris Carson and then Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson is literally a poor man's Gilbert Arenas. Live by the 3, die by the 3. That guy sucks. He's a benefit right now of circumstance because Cousins doesn't remember how to throw the ball. Look, Jordan Reed, Terrell Pryor, Jamison Crowder, those guys haven't done anything. So what's his name has been the beneficiary. I don't like it. It's going to come a time where this Chris Thompson is going to bite you in that butt, Trent, and I promise it's coming soon.
I can't wait till he hangs like 16 again this week. But let's move on. Your second running back, Jeremy. Who you got?
Second running back is one I'm not as excited about, but hey, why not? I like the name. Once upon a time, it could have been before Y2K, but Matt Forte was a rookie. Matt Forte had a great rookie season and had a great career. That career is coming to an end. But he's like a Frank Gore type situation. You play Matt Forte in situational lineup. They are playing the Dolphins this week, who aren't bad, but definitely can give up some points. And I like Forte to get some dump-offs. For whatever reason, Bilal Powell is just not the guy. And everyone thought he was. He's another guy who I didn't pick in one league because I could not understand that value. But love Forte. He had, 9 rushes for 53 yards and 4 catches for 38. So if he punches one in there, he's pushing 20 points. So I like Forte this week with a apocalyptic matchup.
So if you guys can't see the background behind me and Jeremy, it's a couple of zombies. That is what Matt Forte is at this point. He is a zombie clinging to signs of life. I'm actually stunned he's even still in the NFL. He's just hanging on. It's actually a very similar situation to another running back the Jets had a few years ago with Danian Tomlinson. His best days are way behind him. At best, you were just talking about, he is in a timeshare with Bilal Powell. I'm not going
the lead back.
Forte. So I don't like this spot at all.
Well, tell me how you really feel. All right, Trent, give us your better running back, apparently.
All right, so my second running back this week is, I'll admit, it's a bit of a flyer I'm taking here, but I'm going with Darren Sproles of the Eagles. Now, for those of you who tuned in week 1 when we were on YouTube, you'll remember I unsuccessfully picked Wendell Smallwood. Even though the pick didn't work out, I still stand behind the logic, which is LeGarrette Blount is not good, and I did not think the Eagles would believe in him. And sure enough, what happened on Sunday? LeGarrette Blount had zero carries. Darren Sproles had 10 carries for 48 yards. That's 4.8 yards a carry, incredibly efficient. But we all know Darren Sproles does his best work in the passing game. He had 30 yards receiving, just 2 catches. Probably not going to be that low again. Even better, they're playing the Giants. Has the potential to be a high-scoring game, which means, and besides, let's not forget, Carson Wentz has thrown like 45 times both of the first 2 weeks. So the Eagles are very committed to throwing the ball this year. And if that's the case, that gives Sproles even more value. Again, we're scoring on a PPR format. So what the heck? I'm going to roll with Darren Sproles here.
All right. I think I, along with everyone else listening, is ready for that to be over with. Darren Sproles sucks just as much as Wendell Smallwood. Trent, I'd like to ask you, how many carries did Sproles have week 1 when you – by the way, kudos to the guy who predicted LeGarrette Blount to be terrible, but the 2 guys he started were just as bad. So Darren Sproles had 2 carries for 2 yards week 1. I don't like it.
What had last week?
He had a little bit better week last week. There is a lot better options out there. Darren Sproles is not one of them. There are other guys I would pick over Darren Sproles right now. Sproles is going to have a game this year. Could it happen this week? Potentially. But he's not a guy I'm relying on, even in an apocalyptic situation.
All right, so we both hate each other's second running backs. Let's see if we're a little bit more friendly with each other's wide receivers. Jeremy, who's going to be your first wide receiver this week?
If you disagree, it's only because for the sake of the show, and I'll call that out right now. Your favorite, Danny Amendola. He should play this week. He's questionable, missed last week, gave him a little bit of extra time to play. Trent, who are the Patriots playing this week? They had a decent matchup.
Yeah, they are playing the Texans, actually. It's not actually a super great matchup, but it's an okay spot.
Right. Jonathan Joseph, you would think, is better. Historically, the Texans have been better, but Jonathan Joseph is just the whole Texans defense doesn't look that great. But anyway, excuse me.
I mean, they shut down the Bengals on Thursday night.
Excuse me, what? Did you say the Bengals?
You can't say they didn't look great. They held a team to 9 points.
What did the Ravens do the Bengals the week before that? Yeah, come on. The Jets are better than the Bengals. Anyway, Danny Amendola, I like him to have around 15, and if he gets a touchdown, I think he could be a low 20s to 25 guy this week. Trent, what are your thoughts on Daniel?
Yeah, there's just no way I can argue with this pick.
Let's go.
I own him on my team. The only concern is whether or not he plays. He has a concussion. Right. I mean, he sustained that concussion week 1. That was a Thursday night game, let's not forget. So that's an extra 2 days, which means by the time Sunday comes, he'll have had 16 days to recover from that concussion. I would have to think that's enough time. Tom Brady, my boy, as you can see in the poster, firmly proved he was back last week. Had over 300 yards and
we're not talking about Brady.
In the first half alone.
First wide receiver pick.
Well, let me finish up real quick. I'm praising your pick. Brady threw for 447, shut all the haters up. Danny Amendola, he's like the security blanket. Brady's always had this guy, and that's Danny Amendola this year. If he plays, he's going to have a great value. As far as my first wide receiver, a guy who, I mean, you probably would have never even thought of, but you just look at the numbers and see what he's done the first 2 weeks. You can't argue with it. Jermaine Kearse of the New York Jets, who, according to Jeremy, are better than the Bengals, absolutely lit it up last week. Scored 22 points, scored 2 touchdowns. Week 1, he had 12 points. He's got 11 catches through 2 games. He's basically the only wide receiver the Jets have. Admittedly, as much as it hurts me to say it, as he is a Sam Houston State alumni, Josh McCown is not the best quarterback, but Jermaine Kearse is really the only guy he has to throw the ball to, and they're going to be losing, probably badly, which means he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. So I like Jermaine Kearse to keep it rolling here. He's had 2 really good games. I think he does it again.
For sake of time, and because I agree, I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I do like Kearse. He is a cheap guy that you can pick up right now for very inexpensive, if nothing at all. Wouldn't mess around trading for him really unless he's a throw-in player, but yeah, definitely get him thrown in. If you need somebody, Kearse would be a good spot start. The Dolphins secondary is not that great this year. They're okay, but again, it's not that great. So yeah, I like the Kearse pick actually.
All right, well, we're getting a little friendly here. Let's see if that can tell you. Who's going to be your second wide receiver?
I like a guy named J.J. Nelson. He's quietly emerged as a star. 2 touchdowns through 2 games, 5 catches in both of those. 13 targets total, 7 and 6. He had 5 for 43 or 47, 49 and a touchdown. Then he had 5 for 120 and a touchdown. And I was watching the dude play. He was making some grabs. Larry Fitzgerald was an afterthought. He's just like pushing Matt Forte's wheelchair. Both of them are about out of the league, but they're on their way out. So I do like J.J. Nelson as a sneaky guy to get you some points because the Cardinals seem to not be very good, and I think they're going to have to put up some points this year.
Yeah, just like you said, for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep it moving. I like J.J. Nelson also. I think, again, he's an under-the-radar guy who's quietly producing, and at a certain point, you are what your numbers say you are. I think Nelson has a chance to become a legitimate flex player as the season develops.
All right, Trent, we're doing pretty great on time. Give me your last wide receiver pick.
So my second wide receiver to go along with Kearse, I am taking Kenny Stills, double dipping with the Dolphins. Again, didn't work out quite the way I wanted to last week with Cutler and Thomas. I think it's going to do a little bit better this week with Cutler and Stills. If there's one thing that we know Jay Cutler possesses above all other tools, is he has a cannon. For as much as you want to criticize his decision-making, you cannot criticize the arm strength. He arguably has, well, I would say second best deep ball in the league behind Joe Flacco. So Cutler, rocket arm. Kenny Stills is the deep threat. Cutler, I mentioned, threw 1 touchdown last week. That touchdown went to Kenny Stills. Once again, they're playing the Jets. Very leaky defense. This is a team that Kenny Stills can easily get behind, beat their secondary. Wouldn't be surprised to see him have like a 40-yard touchdown. That's totally in play here. So admittedly a little boomer bust, but I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going with Kenny Stills.
40 yards, huh? So 39 yards or less, we go eat Freebirds. No, okay, Kenny Stills. Here's what I like. I like him as a person. With all those tattoos, I'm sure he's a great guy. But no, 5 targets I like. 1 touchdown I like last week. Here's what I don't like. 2 receptions for 37 yards. You're exactly right. He's a boomer bust guy. Even with that touchdown, he only got 11. But he is a guy who can have a good game here or there. So if you need somebody, and I'm saying you are scraping, pick this guy up because he's got a decent matchup. But you got to be scraping for that one.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the final picks. So, Jeremy, who will be your tight end?
All right, Trent, I'm ending it with Evan Ingram, a rookie out of New York. The Giants are terrible. They will be throwing the ball for the entire season. They don't have a running game. They don't have a passing game. They don't have an offensive line. Typically, tight ends bode well. Also, historically, Eli likes tight ends. What was that big dude's name who caught all those touchdowns against the Cowboys?
Yeah.
He was
huge. Yeah. I don't remember his name. I know who you're talking about. Like, he came and went without a trace.
Right. It was so interesting. So, anyway, I like Ingram. He's had 4 catches for 48 yards and 4 for – wait, let me get that right. Yeah, something like that. And then he had a touchdown last week. But anyway, he had 14 points and 8 points. He's had 12 total targets in 2 games. That's with Odell playing as well. He had more targets last week. So don't let that scare you at all. I really like Ingram as a starter, especially if you got like Eifert or, Jimmy Graham. I mean, it's about time to bench his butt.
All right, so real quick, giving my thoughts on Evan Ingram. Pulling back the curtain behind the scenes a little bit, as Jeremy mentioned, he won last week. He got to make first pick. I actually wanted to make Evan Ingram my tight end pick. I really like this pick. One other thing I want to throw out that Jeremy didn't even mention, Evan Ingram was the Giants' first-round pick in the NFL draft this year. This is a guy they're clearly high on, and the results through 2 weeks prove why. He's a big target, but he's basically a wide receiver. He is the Antonio Gates model of tight end. He's not a blocker. He is definitely a route runner, and he's going to make plays over the middle and in the end zone. So I like Evan Ingram.
Hey, speaking of Gates, he is now the leading tight end touchdown catcher. So that was pretty cool. Did you see that?
I did not, actually. That's interesting. You're talking about for the career?
Yeah. He just surpassed Tony Gonzalez. He's like number 5 all-time, I think, in touchdowns.
I mean, that makes sense. He had some just monster years.
Dude, I know.
In the mid-2000s.
He was like Jimmy Graham before Jimmy Graham was the Jimmy Graham that we all used to know.
Right, and for a longer time period, too. Like, Jimmy Graham was really only that dominant player for, like, 2 years.
Yeah, seriously.
Antonio Gates had, like, a 5-year run where he was arguably the best tight end in the league.
Right. So, I don't think there was any questions asked. That was with Tony Gonzalez still around, too.
Yeah.
All right. We could toot their horns all day, but let's finish it, Trent, with the final tight end pick.
So I'll be perfectly honest. I'm not super crazy about my own pick here. I had to pick somebody. I'm going to go with Charles Clay. He is the Buffalo Bills tight end. He only had 5 points last week. He did, however, have 15 points in week 1. Tyrod Taylor, we know, is not the most lethal passer in the world. He definitely relies on the intermediate to short throws. That's what Charles Clay is going to provide him. The Bills are playing the Broncos, so there's a chance they get blown out. So that would mean a lot of pass attempts for Tyrod. And like I always say, those attempts have to go somewhere. And I think in this case, that's going to be Charles Clay.
I actually like Clay because there's no one else really to throw to. Zay Jones hasn't emerged at all. Jordan
3
Matthews,
points each of the first 2 games. 3.
And he dropped a game-winning first down. Or was that this last week or week 1? Anyway, Charles Clay is like the only guy there. And Antonio Gates, like we said, played the Dolphins last week, got a touchdown. So I think Miami really tries to focus more on the outsides and will let the tight ends beat them. So I could see Clay being all right, but he won't be better than Ingram.
All right, so those are our picks of the week. I actually really think we've got some really good picks this week.
Me too. I had not a lot of confidence week 1, a little more last week, but this week I actually kind of like both sides of the ball a little bit better, minus that Chris Thompson pick. No, just kidding. My least favorite pick of yours is definitely Kenny Stills.
Fair enough. But before we depart, Jeremy, any words of wisdom?
Not much words of wisdom aside from frustration. I'm pissed at Andrew Luck. If you're in that situation like I am, I had T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle. Doyle did okay. Don't panic. Don't panic, especially on T.Y. I think he'll have Do not panic. Andrew Luck is not playing this week. However, he might be back week 4. They didn't put him on. Here's some positivity. They didn't put him on the PUP list. So odds are he'll be playing week 5 or week 6. If he was on the PUP list, he'd have to play week 7. So there's a good chance we'll see him in the next 4 weeks. But
let me ask you this real quick, Jeremy, since we're talking about the Colts. I had this conversation with my brother today. Would you drop Dante Moncrief at this point? Because I would just flat out drop Dante Moncrief. I don't even think he's worth a roster spot.
I don't either, especially because of who else is available. Yeah. I think Moncrief is not worth keeping. Let me put it this way. I'm at the point of dropping Decker, not quite Brandon Marshall yet, but very close.
All right. Well, I think that just about does it for us, huh, Jeremy?
It does. Thanks to everyone who's listening now or later. At some point, we'll probably have a clearer communication streaming feed. Beggars can't be choosers for now. So we appreciate everyone listening, and we will see you next week. I'll be wearing this hat with another victory.